Just to remind people, at the bottom of your screen is the chat, and we're going to do all questions tonight in order to get all the program in that we want. It's going to be about a 90-minute presentation, and we will go through all of the chat questions at that time. Don't worry if you put your question in there early and that Mark answers it as we go. That's fine. If you got the question, don't forget it. Write it in there. And also, I'm the world's worst speller, so don't worry about spelling. I can read words that are really spelled crazy. So get your questions in there on the chat. Mark H.X. Glenshaw is an award-winning naturalist who has closely observed and documented the lives of great horned owls in Forest Park in St. Louis, Missouri since 2005. He shares his work on his blog, Forest Park Owls, which you can find at forestparkowls.blogspot.com, and I'll write that on the chat sometime during the program so you can see it. He does extensive outreach work with his owls. He leads dozens of owl prowls at Forest Park each year. He also gives scores of talks each year across Missouri and Illinois and beyond to a wide range of organizations and institutions. He was awarded a Citizen Scientist Award by the Academy of Science at St. Louis in 2006. Mark is a certified interpretive guide, a certified Missouri master naturalist, and also a volunteer for an organization called Forest Park Forever. He's originally a native of Washington, D.C., and the son of American mother and a South African father. He's a dual citizen in both nations. He has a bachelor's degree in history and minor in communication and journalism through Washington University in St. Louis. I'm excited to turn the program over to Mark as we listen to his program entitled Forest Park Owls, Hiding in Plain Sight. Thank you, Mark, for being here tonight.
Thank you, Don, so much for that lovely introduction. I want to really thank Don and Gary and Juliet and everyone at Northwest Illinois Audubon Society for their work in making this program occur. Programs, whether virtual or in person, have a lot of moving pieces, and it takes a lot of work to make those pieces work together very smoothly and nicely. So thank you for their work and their support. I want to thank each and every one of you for signing up and attending tonight. I appreciate how precious time is on a weekday evening, and I'm very grateful for you taking the time on this weekday evening to learn more about owls. And I want to start tonight with a quick reassurance. Even with Gary's, Don's very nice introduction still ringing in your ears, I think I may need to reassure you that I'm the right person to talk to you tonight about owls. And I say that because many, if not most of you, are meeting me for the first time. And since you're meeting me for the first time, you're noticing things about me. And I'm sure high on that list of things you're noticing about me is the frankly appalling and ever-growing lack of hair on my head. So I think I may need to reassure you that I really do study owls and not bald eagles. Now, I'm always excited to see a bald eagle. This is what I photographed in the territory of the owls that I study. And anytime I see a bald eagle, it's a cool thing, but I really do focus my efforts on studying owls, and in particular, great horned owls. So anytime I talk about the owls and my work with them, whether it's something more formal like tonight or just talking to a neighbor or a colleague, and I mentioned that I study owls and have been doing so for some time, the first and best question comes up very quickly. And that question is, so how did this all begin? And that's really the key question, because this is not something that you just roll out of bed one day and decide to do. No, this began very organically and very naturally. It began with two seeds. And the first seed is something I'm sure I share in common with the vast majority, if not all of you, is a lifelong interest in wildlife. Ever since I was a very young child, I've been fascinated by wildlife. Now, this interest has not gone away, but I found in the early 2000s, this interest really coming up to the forefront in a way it hadn't for some time. The other seed involves St. Louis and this place in St. Louis called Forest Park. And ever since I moved to St. Louis in 1995, I've lived close to Forest Park. And as this interest in wildlife was coming up to the forefront in the early 2000s, I thought, well, where can I study wildlife close to my home. And I put 2 and 2 together, and I said, let's study the wildlife in Forest Park. Now, I do want to say a little bit about Forest Park. Some of you may have been to St. Louis, some of you may have been to Forest Park, some of you may not have done either. And I think this is an important thing to go over anytime I present, say, more than an hour away from St. Louis. I don't want to assume that people know about Forest Park. So let's zoom out to a wider view of North America. Of course, Missouri just east of the center part of the lower 48. And we'll zoom into Missouri, and St. Louis is on the east side of the state, central part of Missouri, north and south. And here's a zoomed in look at St. Louis itself. Of course, this little creek here, that's the Mississippi River. And if you look to the west, between the north and south points of the city, right in the middle of the city, north and south, is this pretty extensive patch of green. And that is this, and that is Forest Park. And Forest Park, as you're noticing just from these maps, is quite large. So how large? Well, it's really big, just under 1,300 acres, making it one of the largest urban parks in the United States. And just to put that figure into context, it's over 500 acres larger than Central Park in New York City. So a very large park. And it's a much loved park because the park is an oasis of nature and peace and calm away from the busy city streets. And it's also home to several of the St. Louis region's major cultural and educational institutions. For example, right here in the middle of the photo is the St. Louis Art Museum. And to the east, to our left, is the St. Louis Zoo. And that's just 2 of several major cultural and educational institutions. So between these, the multifaceted aspect of the park, people come to Forest Park in vast numbers. 13 million visitors a year use Forest Park. And to put that figure into context, the population of Missouri is around 6 million people. So that's a lot of people coming to Forest Park. The park is also very well regarded, and I could just state that, but I've come to embrace the spirit of the Show Me State, the ethos of the Show Me State. So I'd rather show you this list of recent awards and accolades from national organizations and media outlets that Forest Park has received in the last few years. So a very well regarded park. And the park does have a lot of the things that you would expect in a large urban park, like turf grass, playing fields, horticultural areas. But thankfully, the park also has great habitat diversity. It has 2 types of forests. There are wetlands, woodlands, savannas. There are lakes, creeks, ponds, and a river system, and approximately 45,000 trees put the forest in Forest Park. So in the early 2000s, I began to go to Forest Park, and I quickly fell in love with the park and its wildlife because I began to see and eventually photograph a wide range of wildlife. Some animals that I'd seen before, like red-tailed hawks. And if you're watching from the St. Louis area, this is by the World's Fair Pavilion. And I bet each of us have seen a red-tailed hawk, but I would also wager something else, that any day you see a red-tailed hawk, that day becomes a better day. You might be having a good day and it becomes a great day because you've seen a red-tailed hawk. You might have a bad day become, okay, it wasn't a bad day. I did see a red-tailed hawk. I also began to see animals I had seen maybe once or twice before, like muskrats. And if you're not familiar with muskrats, they're large aquatic rodents, not quite as big as their cousin the beaver, but good size. This one is swimming in a creek just west of the Muni. I also began to see animals I had never seen before, like coyotes. There are coyotes in Forest Park. My friend Edward Krim took this photo, but I'm happy to say I saw these same coyotes on the very same day back in December 2009, December 21st. And I mentioned my friend Edward taking this photo not only to give him credit, but also to point out a key difference. Edward is a professional photographer. I, on the other hand, I am a naturalist who takes pictures. And I hope you enjoy my photos and videos tonight, but I definitely want to make that distinction abundantly clear, if only to myself, if not others. And these coyotes were not in some wild, remote area of the park. Nope, they're about 100 yards from the front doors of the St. Louis Art Museum that we just saw a few slides ago. And more than ever, I really began to take a closer look at and spend more time observing and researching birds like this great egret in mid-snack over by the Steinberg ice rink. So totally enthralled with the park and its wildlife, going there very, very frequently, but I had not seen owls. Now, I knew there were owls in Forest Park from reading reputable sources and talking to reputable people, but I wasn't seeing them, but nor was I surprised. I knew very little about owls, but I knew enough to know that owls are hard to find, and they're hard to find for two key reasons. Actually, I misspoke. I'm sorry, three key reasons. They're incredibly well camouflaged. They're mostly active at night. And if that wasn't enough, they fly fast and silently. So two of those things would be tough. All three working together makes owls very tough to find. And leading owl prowls, I regularly have people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s who have never seen an owl in the wild because they are so hard to find. So I wasn't looking for owls. I never expected to see owls, but one day, without even trying, I finally saw owls. Now, I wish I had written this date down. You learned that I studied history, and history is more than names and dates, but names and dates are still pretty important. But I can tell you it was the late August, early September 2005 when I first saw owls in Forest Park. And on this particular time in my life, I worked on the west side of Forest Park and I lived on the east side of the park. And on this particular day, I had one of those long, tough days at work. We've all been there. And it was such a long, tough day at work that I thought, I'm not going to take the bus or the train or get a ride from a friend. No, I need some nature time. I need to decompress and de stress. I'm going to walk home through Forest Park and I'm going to feel better in 5 minutes, never mind in 45 or 50 minutes when I get home. And it was such a long day at work that by the time I left work, the sun was already setting quite rapidly. And by the time I got into this particular natural area of the park, the sun had set even further. So I was walking through this area, looking around, listening, and I was about 100 feet past this dead tree that you see, which is still there, when out of nowhere, I heard hooting. And again, I took two and two and put them together. And I thought, okay, it's quite dark. It may not be completely past sunset, but it's rather dark and I'm hearing this hooting. This has to be owls. And I listened more carefully and I realized, wow, the sound is coming from that big dead tree. And I walked back to that big dead tree, and there in that tree were two great horned owls. Now, I knew very little about owls, but I knew enough to know that they were great horned owls, very big, and with two things on top of their heads, which I was pretty sure were not horns, but I thought might be ears. And later I learned that those two things on top of their head are just groups of feathers called tufts. Now, I was incredibly excited because I had only seen an owl once before in my life, 14 years earlier. And this was my first time seeing owls in Forest Park. And I was incredibly lucky because in the next 20 to 30 minutes, I had such an amazing first sighting. In that brief span of time, I saw the owls hoot together in a duet, a beautiful vocal and visual display, haunting sounds, gorgeous motions. I saw the owls fly several times, fast, powerful, ethereal in flight, just spellbinding. But the owls weren't done. The owls still had a cherry on top moment yet to provide, and that occurred when, completely to my shock and surprise, one of the owls chased a great blue heron. Now, great blue herons are twice the size of a great horned owl. They're very powerful predators in their own right, but this heron was terrified of the owl and it flew out, squawking and croaking in alarm and panic, like so. That was one terrified great blue heron. I was one completely hooked naturalist. Here, these owls in 20 to 30 minutes had taken my love of Forest Park and its wildlife and had poured gasoline on the fire. And I walked home, my eyes doing very good impressions of saucers. And I got home and I told my girlfriend Wendy about every beat, every moment. And then I paused and I thought, what do I know about owls? Practically nothing. Let's change that. Time to hit the books. This is the first book on owls that I owned, Owls by Connie Toops. I bought it a few years earlier at a library book sale, and I pulled it off the shelf that night and read about 80% of it. It was a great book with which to start. I have had the honor and pleasure to mentor several people about owls, and I always start them with Connie Toops's book, Owls, because it's such a fantastic overview. It actually has a fair amount on great horned owls. And as good as this book was, though, I didn't stop with one book. I've acquired a few more in the intervening years. I now have over 50 books on owls, and I'm always looking for new books, old books that I've missed, scholarly journal articles, magazine pieces, anything and everything that can teach me more about owls, and especially great horned owls. And I know I'm preaching to the choir a little here, but I think it bears emphasizing that anytime you study anything in nature, whether it grows on the ground, flies in the air, swims in the water, you have to do the homework, you have to do the field work. You have to sit in your favorite chair and learn the facts inside and out. But you also have to strap on your boots and go out and see things with your own eyes and ears. And what's great is that each type of work helps and inspires the other type of work. To this day, I will see great horned owl behavior that makes me say, what the heck was that? And I keep doing my homework, trying to learn what was that, or that, or that, or that. And then I'll be doing my homework, learning a new fact or getting a different nuance on something I thought I knew perfectly already. And my feet will get itchy because I want to go out and apply this homework knowledge in the field. So with a lot of homework and a lot of field work, but also collaboration, what we're doing tonight, I began to see that same pair of great horned owls more regularly. So I had to name them. And I named them Charles and Sarah. And here they are, Charles higher up on the left, Sarah lower down on the right. And you can see just how beautiful great horned owls are. So that word great is very all encompassing of the definitions of that word great. And they all apply to great horned owls. And not only just amazing, fantastic, beautiful, but also rather large. Great horned owls are the third tallest owl in North America, between 18 and 25 inches tall. With that height comes a lot of weight. Great horned owls are the second heaviest owl in North America, coming in at 2 to 5 pounds. Now, that may not sound very heavy, but keep in mind that most birds that fly, their bones are hollow. And of course, feathers are as light as a feather. So that's heavy for a bird. It's one of those relative statements. And if you look at the photo more closely, again, Charles the male on the left and Sarah the female on the right, you'll notice that Sarah is larger. And this is the case. The females are larger. And this is the case for the vast majority of the birds of prey: owls, hawks, eagles, vultures, falcons, and ospreys. And this phenomenon, which is seen in some other animals, this phenomenon is called reverse sexual dimorphism. Let's try that together. Reverse sexual dimorphism. Now, if I'm reminding you of this term or teaching it to you for the first time, either way, I want to give you a challenge with this term, reverse sexual dimorphism. And I've adapted the challenge for our pandemic times. I want you to use that phrase, reverse sexual dimorphism, in your next Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet, whatever online meeting thing you do. Try and slide it into the conversation. An incredibly important aspect of great horned owls is where they are found. We tonight are talking about not only an owl that's found in Missouri and Illinois, but is the most widespread and commonly found owl in North America. They're found in every state except Hawaii, every province and territory of Canada. And not only that, great horned owls are also found in much of Latin America. So this is a huge geographic range. It's one of the biggest of any birds of prey on the planet. And out of this huge geographic range comes an interesting paradox. Bit of a push, bit of a pull. On one hand, great horned owls are really easy to study because you can find them in so many different spaces and places and habitats. On the other hand, that makes them very hard to study and generalize about because they live in so many different places. Just taking our friend the letter A, this is an owl that you can find in Alaska, Alberta, Arizona, Arkansas, Alabama, and I've run out of fingers, Argentina. So think of how different those places are to each other and the impacts on the owls' lives. So with great horned owls, there are huge variations in their diet, territory size, population density, where they nest, and when they nest. So let's keep that in mind as we go through tonight's program. To study the owls, I go out very frequently. An average week, I'm there 6 to 7 nights per week. That comes out to over 300 nights per year. I do take vacations, and I do go out with my girlfriend. It's important that I remind her who I am from time to time. But going out so frequently is really key because it gives me a lot of data with which to work, and not just, you know, data on one aspect of the owl's lives, but on many aspects of their lives. Where are they perching and roosting? Where are they hunting? What are they hunting? Are they very vocal? Are they mating? Are they nesting? Are they having young? How many young? So I can compare what I saw last night to 2 nights ago, 4 nights ago, 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago, and now a little over 15 years. So that's a lot of data with which to work. In all of this, timing is key. I arrive about an hour before sunset, and this is a great time to find the owls. You've got some daylight with which to work, but this is also when they start to wake up and become active. It's also very important that I wear the right clothes and I bring the right gear. You see me here wearing the proper attire to present, even virtually. So nice shirt and jacket, and yes, even dress pants. And I think that's important to dress like that. But let me just reassure you, this is not what I wear when I go out to study the owls. That's what I look like when I go out to study the owls. Dark, muted colors. You would never see me wearing a bright blue shirt, boots, a backpack, cameras, binoculars. And yes, the car with the license plate Owlman, that's my car. And since I have so many sharp-eyed birders, naturalists, and other observant people, you've probably noticed that the facial hair in the photo is a little different from what you're seeing here over the interwebs tonight. Well, what you're seeing in the photo is winter plumage. And what you're seeing here live tonight is very new spring plumage. And that will only be around for another 3 to 5 weeks or so, and then all shaven off. And yes, then we'll have summer plumage. So as I go out to see the owls, I get to see a wide variety of behaviors. And the first behavior I see is what you're seeing Sarah do there, sleep. So coming out about an hour before sunset, they're slowly starting to wake up. So you do get to see them sleep. But as they begin to wake up, they do the same things that we all do, and our cats and our dogs and lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and everything else does as they begin to wake up. The owls stretch and groom. This is one of two stretches that the owls do. And this stretch I call the escalator stretch for reasons that'll become even more apparent in a few moments. And this massive expanse of wing and feathers that you're seeing, that is only one wing. So let's watch a video of Charles doing an escalator stretch. And when they do that stretch, they're not only stretching out their wing, but on the same side of their body, they're stretching out their leg and their toes. So just like when you get out of bed and you kind of stretch your arms wide and far, this is a similar thing for the owls. It's just gonna take a moment for this video file to open up. It can be a little sticky sometimes, even though I just tested this a moment ago. And what's also neat is that there are different types of escalator stretches. What you're going to see in the video is quite a long and wide one, but sometimes they're more angular and shallow. So it's neat to see all these differences. And some days you see a lot of stretching, other days you see very little of it. Same with grooming. And some nights you get a lot of both, or you get a lot of one, but not the other. And I'm sorry, this is the most challenging time I've had with the video files open. And we literally just tested one of these about 45 minutes ago before the meeting began. Okay, there we go. My apologies for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really sorry, that just played very poorly. One moment, I'm going to try that again. Much better. You can see why I call it the escalator stretch. It looks like an escalator unfolding just beautifully. Grooming is very key. This is Charles demonstrating the incredible neck flexibility that all owls have. He is grooming his tail feathers with his bill. So try scratching your nose with your shoulder or your shoulder with your nose. Pretty hard to do. He's literally cleaning his tail feathers by pulling them through his bill. So flexible neck, flexible back. Grooming, very important, keeping the owls dry, clean, warm, and in helping keep their feathers in good shape, not only to keep them dry and warm, but to ensure their silent flight. And grooming varies immensely, just as we groom different parts of our body in different ways. I tend to use my toothbrush only for my tooth. And in this video, we're going to see Charles do very typical type of grooming, using his bill quite a bit as he grooms his lower chest, tummy, and legs. So very typical type of grooming. And one of the things I love about studying these owls, and I mentioned this a little with the escalator stretch, is you notice variations in their behavior. But even without a major variation, some of these behaviors I've seen thousands of times, and they're just as beautiful and fascinating and compelling today in 2021 as they were in 2005. It simply doesn't get old observing and documenting these owls. Another great aspect of these owls is that every night is different and every night is unique. And there are some behaviors I've seen only once or twice, or maybe if I'm really lucky, a handful of times. What I'm going to show you next is something I've only seen twice. And that is a really neat behavior when it rains. Again, sometimes I've only seen it twice. If it's raining when the owls are starting to wake up, they're not exactly thrilled with it. They just kind of deal with it and slowly wake up and become active. It's kind of like, okay, I've got my umbrella, I've got my jacket, I'm just, going to work, going to run an errand. Well, here back in September 2015, it hadn't rained for 2 weeks and it began to rain, not just a gentle little misting, no, a capital R rain. And Charles moved to the top of a dead tree, and you're not going to see one wing, you're going to see both wings and his tail feathers spread out as he takes a shower. And you'll see and hear that rain as he takes the shower. I love how he shakes his tail feathers at the end. I love that whole thing. I never tire of seeing that. And I never tire of seeing the owls. I mean, it's as profound and simple as that, that every night is different, every night is unique. One behavior that I don't see every night, but sometimes I'll see it a few times in a week or maybe several times in a month, are the owls ejecting pellets. And here's Sarah, and she's leaning over her branch, and something is coming out of her bill. And that something is a pellet. Now, some of you are probably like me in present day 2021, and you can say, yes, I am familiar with owl pellets. I've even dissected owl pellets. Some of you might be like me back in 2005, and you're saying, what's a pellet? Well, that is a pellet. A pellet is made up of all the things that an owl cannot digest: fur, bones, feathers, insect exoskeletons, anything the owls can't digest. Those materials get compacted in a special part of their digestive tract called the gizzard and then ejected out of the mouth. Now, it doesn't hurt when they eject a pellet. It's a totally natural process, but it's a lot like a cat with a fur ball. It's not exactly pleasant. And like a cat with a fur ball, just after the owl gets out the pellet, there's a lot of sort of shaking of the head and other parts of the body as they recover from that. And then a few seconds later, they're fine. Now, before we see what pellet ejection looks like, I want to give you a hint, a tease of some of the things that great horned owls can eat. This next picture is of the first partially intact skull I ever found in one of their pellets. This is the skull of a wood duck. Birders, naturalists, wood ducks are good sized birds. They're not that much smaller than great horned owls. They fly at great speed with great agility. But one of these wood ducks was caught, killed, and eaten and digested by a great horned owl. So with that in mind, let's watch Charles eject a pellet. Now, as an observer and documenter, sometimes pellets just bam, they just come up really quickly. Other times you get more of a hint that they're coming up. And this is one of those nights where I got more of a hint. This white patch on Charles's throat. All great horned owls have this bright white patch. It's called gular sac, Gular. And as a pellet is coming up, the gular sac can get bigger. I also noticed Charles wasn't hooting. And once the pellet reaches a certain point, they can't hoot until they get it out. Like if we're doing Q&A and I took a big bite of the sandwich and he said, well, can you tell me about the, so I was noticing these hints of pellet ejection. I just kept watching, just kept filming. And a few seconds later, he's all done, ready to go. So always thrilling to see pellet ejection. It's a intrinsically fascinating behavior. It also gives you a bit of a warm fuzzy, or in this case, wet slimy, because it tells me that the owls have eaten recently. Now, at this time of year, and throughout much of the range of great horned owls, this is not an especially vocal time of year. For many parts in many parts of the range of great horned owls, best time of year to hear great horned owls is in the fall and winter when they hoot together, male and a female in a pair. This is called a duet, just like two people playing an instrument or singing together. And duets have several purposes. It's how they defend and declare territory. This is our territory, stay the heck out. It's how a new pair courts, and it's how an established pair builds and maintains their pair bond. Great horned owls have the longest breeding cycle of any owl in North America. From the time the owls start mating to the time the owlets leave the parent's territory, which is called dispersal, mating to dispersal, usually about 7 to 9 months. So you need a really good pair bond. You can't have the longest breeding cycle of any owl in North America on kind of a singles bar, first date, Tinder basis. You need a good pair bond. Now, we've mentioned the size difference in most birds of prey, including great horned owls, but it can be hard to tell apart because they don't always line up right next to each other on the branch. Case in point, here's Sarah, larger than Charles, higher up and further away from the camera. Charles, who is smaller than Sarah, is much closer to the camera, much lower to the ground, so it can be hard to tell them apart. Thankfully, great horned owls are one of the few owls where it's very easy to tell male and female apart just by their call, even if you can't see them. The male hoot is low, long, few, deep notes. Hoo, 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 hoo. And the female's hoot is even shorter, softer, higher notes, and more of them. Hoo, 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 hoo. And it's just a gorgeous sight and sound to hear. It's gorgeous to hear, but it's even better to hear and see. So let's watch Charles and Sarah hoot together in a duet. And this is early on in the duet. This is what I call first gear. Charles higher up on the right, Sarah lower down on the left. And as we listen to them hoot, listen for that difference between Charles and Sarah, male and female, and watch how their bodies move. So it's such a beautiful vocal to hear, but it's also a beautiful body movement to watch. So let's talk more about the body movement. Notice how they lean over and they puff out the gular sac. Well, the hoot is actually made by the gular sac. The gular sac, Gular, inflates with air. Air moves across the vocal cords, but here's the twist. When the owls hoot, their bills, their mouth, closed. All of that sound is coming through the gular sac. And in a nice quiet part of the world, the louder call of a male can be heard about 2 miles away. But also notice, in addition to puffing out the gular sac, they're making the hoot, they're also lifting up their tail feathers, and the undersides of their tail feathers, just like the gular sac feathers, are bright white. Now, of all the different colors that great horned owls have, different shades of brown and gray and black and white and orange, what color is going to show up best as it gets darker, darker, darker? Exactly, bright white feathers. So this is a vocal display. Hey, you're going to hear us. It's a visual display. Hey, you're going to see us. So beautiful to see, beautiful to hear. Now, one of the hardest things to do with the owls is also one of the most rewarding things to do. And that's finding the owls, reacquiring the owls when they go off to hunt. And I could tell you why it's hard, but I'd rather show you a video and then ask you a few questions that I'll answer, but I think we have the same answers in common. And this is a very gorgeous, but very run-of-the-mill, average going off to hunt flight by Charles. And you'll get to see him fly off. And then we'll have a couple of questions. And these questions will be very key to just underline why these owls are so hard to find. And some days you just can't find them, but you got to try. So beautiful flight with that 4 to 5 foot wingspan. Okay, question time. How far did Charles fly? We don't know. He just disappeared. Well, where did he land? Well, we also don't know. We didn't see him land. He just disappeared. Well, there is one question we can't answer. Is it getting any lighter outside? No, just like now, it's getting darker and darker by the second. Early on with the owls, this is when I would go home. I would think to myself, wow, I've had a great night. We had a really nice duet. Sarah did a lot of stretching. Did a lot of grooming tonight. We had a couple of early flights, but now they've flown off and there's no way I'll be able to find them again. But I also realized the key thing that hunting is such a major part of their daily life. It's such a major part of their lives overall. And if I didn't try to find them and watch them hunt, there's so much I was missing. And if I didn't try, I would never succeed. So that's why it's so hard. But here's one of the things that makes watching them hunt so rewarding. A beautiful sight like this. Gorgeously silhouetted owl, in this case, Sarah, doing the main method of great horned owl hunting. They perch and wait. They look and listen. They perch and wait and look and listen some more. These guys are incredibly patient hunters. As you heard, I'm from the East Coast originally, and I'm an East Coaster by nature. I'm not always the most patient person, but these owls have helped make me become a little more patient because they will hunt from one branch of one tree for 10 minutes and 20 minutes and 40 minutes and 60 minutes. And one night I watched Charles from one branch of one tree for 90 minutes. So very patient hunters and incredibly capable hunters. One of the things that totally hooked me because it surprised me about great horned owls is what great horned owls can eat. When I started studying them, I thought, okay, taking from what I know about other birds, I bet great horned owls eat things like squirrels and mice and rabbits and small birds. And I started doing my homework, and my research confirms that, but also shows they eat a wide variety of small animals, including fish, amphibians, reptiles, and insects as well, and worms, and as well as other invertebrates. That was interesting, not overly shocking. If you can catch a rabbit, you can probably catch a beetle. What was much more shocking was to learn that great horned owls eat a wide variety of small and not so small animals. Great horned owls eat raccoons and skunks and minks and muskrats, and pet owners, they eat domestic cats, they eat small dogs. Remember the wood duck skull? Great horned owls eat ducks and geese. Remember the great blue heron? Great horned owls eat herons and egrets, including great blue herons that are twice their size. Great horned owls eat other owls. They eat ospreys. They eat wild turkeys. There's even a documented case, going back to mammals for a moment, of a great horned owl in Arizona killing and eating a bobcat. And this totally blew my mind that they are apex, top of the food chain predators. So in Forest Park, in much of their range, there's very few things that great horned owls cannot eat. Everything else is on the menu. Now, one of the more dramatic things to see the owls go for and try and catch, whether successful or not, are bats in midair. And I'm going to show this video a few times because it happens very, very quickly. Sarah's going to fly from the right, bat from the left. The magic will occur in the middle.
There he goes. Whoa, going for bat. Jeez.
I also do my own color commentary, free of charge, just added service. So let's break that down. So here comes Sarah like a bat out of hell, just to mix my metaphors. And here from the left comes the bat. Now, bats are tough to catch. They're small, agile, and yes, they have echolocation, essentially airborne sonar. And I sometimes wonder, what does a great horned owl look like on a bat's sonar scope, for lack of a better phrase? I imagine very loud, flashing, bright, and red. And the bat essentially says, oh, bloody heck, I'm going to die. But Sarah says, well, not quite so quickly. You will, hopefully, but I want to catch and eat you. I am going to do my best to do that. So let's back up on Sarah for a moment. And we'll notice her transition from this very level, even flight, just going along, to right before she comes in contact with the bat, she pulls this majorly intense fighter pilot, Top Gun, Jedi Knight, may the fourth be with you, turn in midair. Let's just pull back to that for a second and just see how intense that turn is. I mean, she just whips her body around like it's nothing. Well, these are big birds. So there's that turn. Now, Sarah's not going to try to catch the bat with her bill. No. She lowers her legs and talons, and she's going to try and literally pluck that bat out of thin air. The bat is now directly under Sarah's right wing, one wing length away from Sarah. Sarah realizes, nope, not going to happen. She tucks up her talons and flies away. If you look at the bottom left of my video player, you'll see that all of that took 1 second. So with that in mind, now that we've seen what happened more clearly and slowly, let's watch this video, not sped up, but at the actual speed at which it occurred.
There he goes. Whoa, going for bat. Jeez.
That was a little slow down. But you get the idea. It's super quick, super intense, super fast. Let's try that one more time.
There he goes. Whoa, going for bat. Jeez.
Sorry, video and audio slightly out of sync with each other. But amazing to see that. I always love seeing them going for bats, whether it's successful or not. Now, thankfully, as challenging as it is to be a predator, and all predators miss more than they hit, whether it's a great horned owl, great white shark. But thankfully, the hunting is good in Forest Park because Charles and Sarah have had a few mouths to feed. Since 2006, they have had 23 owlets. So we're going to look at some owlet highlights. 2008 always stands out in my mind. It was the first year I saw them have 3 owlets, and great horned owls average 2 to 3. And it was the first year that I named owlets, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie. And I named them Bart, Lisa, and Maggie because, yes, I'm a huge fan of the TV show The Simpsons, but also for good scientific reasons, because the female great horned owl will lay her first egg and begin to incubate that first egg immediately. And the subsequent eggs will come a day or 2 apart, sometimes as many as 2 to 5 days apart. So that first egg has a real head start on the second, and the second on the third. So again, averaging 2 to 3 eggs in a clutch. Very, very rarely great horned owls will have 4 to 5 owls. Sometimes they'll just have 1. But 2008, I thought, okay, I need names that give me an age order. So Bart, Lisa, and Maggie was very handy. 2012 brought this super cute photo of the owlets, Christopher and Velvet. And yes, when you see the owlets, feel free to go, oh, they're so cute. And they're incredibly cute and sweet, these animals. In fact, they're so cute and sweet, I'm confident they could give Vladimir Putin diabetes. And that would be nice. Another favorite owlet photo came from the following year, 2013. And I love this photo for many reasons. One, it takes me back to that beautiful May day where I walked into their territory, and there were the owls. Hey, Mark, what's happening? But I also like this photo because here they are at the age of 3 months, and you can really see a difference in age and body and feather development. On the right is the oldest owlet, Lawrence, looking much more like an adult than the other 2, especially compared to the youngest owlet, Stuart, here on the left. And on the middle of the branch is the middle child, Edward, right between his 2 siblings in maturation. And these guys even fledged, leaving the nest in age order, and they dispersed, leaving the parents' territory in age order. Another recent highlight was in 2015 of Charles and Sarah having 2 owlets again, Grace and Harold. And I show this photo to illustrate the incredibly rapidly, just remarkable physical development of the owlets. So these owlets, Grace and Harold in this photo, are 2 months old. And look at how big they are compared to Sarah. Now, that's really, really fast growing, especially when you consider that this is what they hatch from. This is a ceramic replica of a great horned owl's eggs. And few rooms over in my fridge are very nice pasture raised farm eggs that my girlfriend Wendy gets me, which are often bigger than this modestly sized egg of a great horned owl. So these babies grow physically very fast, but their abilities take a long, slow, gradual time to catch up. So parents out there, grandparents, aunts, uncles, imagine a human child with the body of a teenager and the abilities of a toddler. And that's what you're dealing with when it comes to great horned owls and their young. So let's watch some owlet antics. The owlets are always amazing to watch. One of my favorite things to see with the owlets is the owlets playing follow the leader. And this was a good example of this back in 2010. And this was another year in which they had 3 owlets, Reese, Malcolm, and Dewey. And it was a very windy April day. And you're going to notice again how huge the owlets are, but how clumsy they are. And one owlet flies to a branch and the other 2 follow. And they're okay at flying, but they're really bad at landing. And on this windy day, really bad at keeping their balance because those abilities are very, very slowly catching up to their massive bodies. You'll also want to listen for this call. This is called a begging sheep. And this is the owlet saying to their parents, Mom, Dad, we're over here, we're hungry. And let's see. Been 4 seconds. We're going to do it again and again and again. And they will make these calls hundreds of times per night. So follow the leader, big, clumsy, hungry owlets. Sorry, I had a little playback difficulty there. Let's try that again. And my apologies for the delay. This is I've had the odd challenge here and there, but this is unfortunately far too challenging. Let's try that again. And so, yeah, those are 2-month-old owlets and huge and clumsy and just fascinating to watch. One of the aspects of the owlet's behaviors that I'd love to see is their curiosity. The whole world is new to them and they're just fascinated by everything and everyone. And this was back in 2015. This was Grace perched on a low branch of a fallen tree, and a firefly, a lightning bug, began to fly around her, and she's just captivated by it. And this is all happening in a park right in the middle of the city. And I know for many of you, it's happening around your homes. And I encourage you to go out and see even more of it. Now, a few weeks after I shot this video, we had a very sad development. Sarah died. I found Sarah looking ill or injured in this very unusual area of their territory. Just from her expression and her posture, I could tell she was ill or injured. And that was July 18th, 2015. And so many of the behaviors we've talked about and looked at today, she did not do. Here, I found her before sunset. I watched her for an hour after sunset. She did not stretch, groom, hoot, fly, hunt, nothing. So I was very concerned. Came back the next morning, she was still there. An owl will perch in a tree, even in the same spot within a tree, sometimes for days on end. But there's such a qualitative difference in her behavior that it told me that she had not left, that she had just been there all night. And I came back that night and she was still there. And the analogy I could not escape was that this was like seeing someone in the hospital. She wasn't doing what she should be doing. She didn't look well. She was not getting better. She was still there. And I came back the following morning, July 20th, and that was the last I saw her. She was there for 36 hours. So an incredibly sad time. My friends and I searched this area and beyond extensively and intensively for her body, but never found her. And I miss Sarah to this day. I miss her every day. Very likely the most amazing female great horned owl that I'll ever see. Through this sad time, there were two major silver linings. One concerned the owlets and food. The owlets eventually have to disperse and leave the parents' territory, and the parents will encourage this by cutting off food from the owlets. And Charles and Sarah had already reached this point with the owlets just a few weeks before Sarah died. And if Sarah had died in June or earlier, the owlets most likely would have died as well, just from lack of food. There are some documented cases with great horned owls of successful single parenthood, but those successful single parenthood cases are very much the exception to the rule. The other silver lining was, as much amazing behavior as I'd seen with Charles and Sarah, I had never seen courtship. They were already a pair when I came upon them. And I had read about courtship, but I had never seen it. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get to see it. And I did, but I had no idea what I was in for in the next few years. A nonstop owl drama whirlwind. In 4 years, Charles had 3 different mates. He courted with 2 females in September 2015, didn't work out with them, but in October 2015, this female, Olivia, arrived and she and Charles became a pair. And a very interesting owl to see, female owl to see, because she was small. Charles is a big male, but she was a small female, about the same size as Charles. She did not attempt nesting. She and Charles mated more and longer than I've ever seen a pair of great horned owls mate. And even with all that, she did not pick a spot and lay eggs. And then as we got into the spring of 2016, she started to spend time away from Charles, sometimes a few hundred yards away, which is very far away, and sometimes over a half mile away. And then she'd come back, she'd go away, and no pattern to this. But I think all of that led to her getting chased out by another female just a few weeks later because she spent this time away from Charles. Nature abhors a vacuum, doesn't like vacancies. And this other owl that chased out Olivia was larger and more aggressive. And I named her Samantha after Samantha from Sex and the City, a very aggressive female. Not only did Samantha shove out Olivia, initially she was chasing Charles around. So very aggressive female. And Samantha was around for just under 3 years. And in that time, she had 5 different nesting attempts. And even I could do the math on that one. In that period, she nested in 2 years, 2018 and 2019, 2 different times. So she tried very hard. She and Charles tried very hard to have young. Unfortunately, all of these attempts were unsuccessful. And in the late winter, early spring of 2019, Samantha was confusingly showing signs that she might be ill or injured, and simultaneously showing signs that she was very healthy as well. It was very odd, but things became more clear in late March of 2019, and it was very clear that she was ill or injured. We were able to get her to a fantastic local raptor rehab and education center, the World Bird Sanctuary, but she sadly died in 2019, in April of 2019, from a massive bacterial infection, just horrible. It spread to many vital organs. A few nights after Samantha died, I was up watching Charles, and I wondered aloud if and when I would see another female great horned owl. And I turned my head and saw this female great horned owl 30 to 40 feet away from Charles. Another very large female like Sarah. And she and Charles had a great duet that night and attempted nesting in 2020. But unfortunately, that nest failed. So Danielle and Charles tried very hard to have young. The nest failed on February 18th of last year when raccoons got in the nest when Danielle was taking a very brief break. So tough year. And then about a month after the nest, about a month after the nest failed, Danielle just disappeared. I have not seen her now for over a year. I hope she is well, but I have no idea if she is and where she is. So Danielle's disappearance was very interesting. We had the longest period I've ever had of Charles without a mate, and that led into a very different fall of this year. And it was such a different fall for many reasons. Not Charles not having a mate, and still no sign of Danielle. But Charles did not give up. He just kept advertising intensively, extensively for a mate, including him hooting here on Thanksgiving night with an almost full moon behind him. He did court with a female briefly in late October. And one of those nights, though, there was another male on the scene, and we literally had a love triangle. And she started hooting more with that other male and actually flew over to that other male. So it was okay. No sign of that female since after November 1st, but Charles still did not give up. Kept hooting. Female shows back up January 4th. They mated, very excited. And then it was sort of, oh, now what? Because she just disappeared. Didn't see her for several days until January 9th. Back again on January 10th, but also back again with the love triangle. She and Charles had just mated, and she went hooting over with this other male great horned owl. So fascinating to see this stuff, but also, well, maybe it won't happen. But again, Charles just kept up the good fight. And thankfully, there's been no resumption of the love triangle since January 10th. She became much more consistent, not only in being in and around Charles, but also then mating. And finally, on Friday, January 15th, I said, okay, I'm making the call that not only are they a pair, but that this female is nesting. It took me a little while to choose her name, and join me in saying hello to Sophie. And what's so exciting is that Charles and Sophie have owlets. And these are the first owlets I've seen Charles and any of his mates have since 2015, the last year with Sarah. First heard the owlets on March 2nd. Next night was the first sighting. 2 nights later, we saw definitely 2 owlets. Say hello to Neil and Lyle. Here they are in the nest well over a month ago. They're about 5 weeks old in this photo. The first owlet, Neil, fledged on April 2nd. Lyle was a few days later on the 5th. And they are taking longer and longer, more confident flights. Here they are a couple of weeks ago with Sophie. I saw all 4 of the owls tonight, and it's just super exciting to see owlets again. And Sophie is a really good mom, and Charles is back in parental shape and doing everything super well. So I just want to conclude by saying this is just a taste of my many years of studying great horned owls in the Wonders Forest Park. And there are many ways that you can learn more about the owls and my work with them. First of all, you can ask the Northwest Illinois Audubon Society to have me back. I've got 3 other talks on owls, one just on hunting and feeding, one focusing on mating, nesting, and owlets. And then my most recent talk, how to find an owl in your neighborhood, how to find the owls near your homes. You can also find me online, and I'll have this information up on my last slide, so no need to scribble it all down now, but my blog, my YouTube page, I'm the co-administrator of a Facebook community called Great Horned Owls, not a group, but a community. You can also find me on Twitter, and thank you for the retweet, Northwest Illinois Audubon Society, about today's talk. And I also want to, if you're watching from the St. Louis area, or you know you're going to be in the St. Louis area, I want to invite you to come out and see the owls. I want to invite you to an owl prowl, about a 2-hour tour where we meet up again that magic hour, about an hour before sunset. And I lead owl prowls all year long, never ending cycle. I led 65 this year. I've led over 35 already this year. To arrange an owl prowl, please email me 3 to 4 dates. That's really key. By having 3 to 4 dates, that gives us more spaces and opportunities to find a mutually agreeable date. For our pandemic times, I'm taking out smaller groups, only 1 to 4 people. If you have more than 1 to 4 people, I'm happy to schedule as many owl prowls as you would like to accommodate everyone. Again, my email address, mglenshaw@gmail.com. And I want to thank Don and Gary and Juliet and everyone at the Northwest Illinois Audubon Society for having me here tonight. It's a real honor and pleasure to share the owls with you. I want to thank everyone for registering and watching tonight. And I'm more than happy to take your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark, for a great presentation and your knowledge, your enthusiasm, your passion for your subject. And we do have some questions in chat that I'm going to ask you. And if other people have questions, please put them in the chat as we scroll through. Jane says, I've been observing a pair of great horned owlets. I have noticed a new behavior with one this evening, and it's bobbing.
Well observed, Jane. Yes, you're seeing the owlets do this. And the parents will do that, but not quite as exaggerated as the owlets. Owls do that head bobbing to get better depth perception on what they're looking at, to further hone in and get a greater concrete look at the object of their attention. And great horned owl youngsters, as their eyes are still developing, their head bobbing is even more exaggerated. Never mind, they're still learning how to use their bodies overall. I'm a little better with my fingers and hands at the age of 48 than I was at the age of, say, 4 or 8. So well observed on that bobbing, and that's fantastic about that pair. I hope you're a pair of owlets. I hope you're seeing their parents too. And yeah, keep observing, keep documenting. Fantastic. Thank you.
Have you been able to track where the young go after they're fledged?
I have not. That's a fantastic question too. I've not banded any of the owlets. I lack 3 key things. I lack the permits, the equipment, and frankly, the intestinal fortitude to band great horned owls. They're very powerful, strong animals, and the females get very aggressive. Thankfully, extensive banding and other studies have been done, and there's a lot of good information from those studies. If there was a real lack of information, a lack of banding and other studies about where did the young go, I would be more interested in doing that. In terms of how far do they go, great horned owlets, it's when they disperse, it's really the only time, with few exceptions, the only time in their life cycle that they go any great distance. And it's usually 50 plus miles. It can be a mile or two or three, as close as they can get away with. It can be much longer. One of the longest dispersals actually involves the part of the world in which our lovely hosts are in tonight. A banded great horned owl was recovered in Western Illinois. Well, big deal. They live all over Illinois. Well, this one was hatched and banded 1,200 miles to the west in Alberta. So that owlet covered some major distance. Dispersal is incredibly important. It helps spread out the gene pool and keep it rich and deep and healthy. Dispersal is also very important for the parent's habitat. If the young stayed there, the prey populations would just get decimated. The owlet's dispersing allows those prey populations to recover in a more natural state. It is a bittersweet process to see, but it does have to happen, and it is fascinating to learn and see where they go. So thank you.
In a preserve the size, or a park the size of Forest Park, how many nesting great horns might there possibly be?
Oh, fantastic. Right now, I know of 3, possibly 4 pairs or near pairs in Forest Park. One of the things about Sophie, I've mentioned this love triangle. Well, thanks to some other folks that were watching that other male, not unfortunately not quite as intensely as I watched Charles and company, but from everything we can ascertain, when we weren't seeing Sophie with Charles, she had become a pair with that other male. But Charles wooed and lured her away from that other male.
Hmm.
So that went from, yes, we have a pair there, to, well, now we have a pair over here. Last 2 weekends ago, in another part of the park I don't get to as much, I went looking for a pair of great horned owls that I haven't heard anything about for a while. And unfortunately, we did not see any owls, or even some of the barred owls in that area. But over the years, there have been 2 and as many as 3 pairs of great horned owls in Forest Park. What's much harder to quantify, and this might answer some other questions, well, hey, where are all these females and males coming from? There's, with owls, much more challenging number to quantify is the number of single owls. Single owls, regardless of species, are called floaters, and they often keep a very low profile, so they're much harder to find and to track. Thank you. Lovely questions, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Do owlet siblings ever compete with each other for food from parents?
Yes. Do the owlets compete? Definitely. And it's generally thought by scientists that the staggered and asynchronous egg laying and egg hatching is an ecological hedge for the parents, that if times are tough, well, instead of everyone not making it, well, the older, larger owlet is probably going to make it, even if the little ones don't. As with other birds of prey, sibling side, fratricide that has been observed with great horned owls, thankfully very infrequently. But that age difference can be quite noticeable for quite some time. Even now, when by markings, it's a little hard to tell Neil and Lyle apart just by the quality of their flights and their landings, and who's being more maybe not aggressive, but more forthright about getting fed. That is often leading us to say, yeah, that probably is the older owlet Neil. Thank you.
Any other owl species in the park forest area?
Yes, there are barred owls in the park, several pairs of barred owls, including a pair very close to Charles's territory. That's a fascinating situation. My best analogy for that situation is with a geopolitical analogy. North Korea, South Korea, a very tense, uneasy piece with flare-ups at various times. And when I first started studying the owls in the park, we had the eastern screech owls, and unfortunately, they have not been seen in the park by myself or anyone for many a year. Very likely not because of quality of habitat or anything like that. It's more that the barn owls and great horned owls have been so successful that it's not really a tenable spot for eastern screech owls, because big owls eat little owls, and hell, even great horned owls eat barn owls. There are even documented cases of great horned owls, the third tallest owl in North America, eating the two species larger than itself, not just youngsters, but even adult great gray owls and snowy owls. So the power of great horned owls cannot be underestimated. I would love to see eastern screech owls again in the park. I also did have an incredibly lucky sighting one night many years ago now of a short-eared owl in Forest Park. I've made many a Forest Park birder quite green with envy by saying, "Well, I did get to see a short-eared owl once." So thank you. Lovely question.
Tell us a little bit about your cameras.
I use a entry-level DSLR, digital single lens reflex camera, basically a camera that you can put different lenses on. I use a Canon Rebel. I'm about 3 models old from their current model. I use the first version of Canon's 100 to 400 millimeter lens. They came out with a newer version a few years ago. I have so many photographers and naturalists who take pictures are moving to mirrorless cameras and other things like that. I'm right in a challenging spot of, do I change my camera body so I get a different lens? Of course, one of the challenges always is with any optical equipment, it's not cheap. And I'm deciding when and where and how to pick my battles. I have been quoted, I'm happy to say, about something with lens length and wildlife photography. 300 millimeters gets you a seat at the table. 400 millimeters, like what I use, allows you to participate in the discussion. 500 millimeters and up, you get to lead the discussion. You get to chair the meeting. I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
The last question as of right now, Mark, is how do you tell the owls apart? What differences are noticeable?
That's a fantastic question. With the owls, there are definitely differences in markings and coloration. With these different females with Charles, and even Charles with other males, fascinating thing with great horned owls is that the hoots are different, as we discussed, from male and female, but also different from individual to individual. So Charles has a very clear, distinct individual hoot. And when I heard what became Sophie in the fall, I knew it wasn't Danielle just by her hoot, even though it was quite dark and I couldn't see any differences in coloration or markings. But it can be tough to tell them apart. There's a number of people that are watching the owls in Forest Park for the first time, and they say, "How do you tell Charles and Sophie apart?" And Charles is overall large, pardon me, not larger. He's smaller than Sophie, but he's lighter overall in color. And 15 years of studying Charles has not only taught me differences in markings and color, but also just posture and attitude, what German scientists call the vibe. And it can be quite striking how easy it is sometimes to tell them apart, and other times how easy it is to get them wrong, just based on the light you have that day, your angle, and what you had for lunch. And I will very happily and freely admit that sometimes, yeah, I do mistake one owl for the other. With the owlets, that can be much harder. It has varied over the years. Some years it's been very easy to tell the owlets apart for long periods of time. This is a year that has been not super hard, but not super easy either. But another way you tell them apart, I mean, think of someone you've known for over 10 years, with a pretty common name. I've known several Dons and Garys, and they're not the Dons and Garys who are hosting tonight. I haven't met that many Juliets, but I've seen a few on stage and screen.
If you could just touch a little clarification, you did address this, but were you able to track the offspring? Did they leave elsewhere? Did they live elsewhere in the park, or did they leave for other parts? And you had discussed that, but maybe just a brief clarification.
Sure. I've not seen them in the park. I would never rule it out, but most likely the owlets have left the confines of the park. And not just for other parks, but just other parts of that work for great horned owls. I mean, these owls are so adaptable. It's not even funny. I mean, I've seen owls just in the St. Louis area in every type of yard, deep in the city, out in the country, suburban, big yard, small parks, big parks, cemeteries, golf courses. I just did a lovely bit of owl consultation in a nearby suburb where this family of owls nested in the backyard of these folks' house, and the owlets and the parents are now moving in and around the backyards and beyond. And this isn't 2,000 people per square mile, but it's a residential neighborhood. It's right by a very main road in St. Louis. I've seen another pair in the same town in a cemetery right by a U.S. interstate, literally right next to the U.S. interstate, and actually that same major road. So the adaptability of these owls is incredible. A little exercise I do with myself when I travel, and I would love to travel and present in person for you sometime in Northwestern Illinois, is I'll look out my window and I'll ask myself, okay, from what you're seeing right now, would this work for a pair of great horned owls? And the answer more often than not is yes. Great horned owls need some trees for perching and roosting. They need some spots for nesting, and great horned owls nest in more different spaces and places than any other species of bird in the Americas. And they need some open areas to hunt. And you can find that in many, many different parts of their huge geographic range. Thank you.
Mark, numerous people have been writing in, great talk, many thanks, awesome accolades to you and your presentation. I want to add mine accolades to that as well. Appreciate like all your knowledge and your enthusiasm and your dedication to wildlife. And I'd like to turn it over to Gary for a close tonight.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Gary.
Well, thank you very much. What an enjoyable evening that was, and I'm sure everybody stuck with it, and I'm sure everybody learned something. And I think people are probably looking forward to making a trip down to St. Louis to come see you and to go on an owl prowl, that type of thing too. So I'm going to close us off here and just thank everybody for coming. Know that we will soon be getting together in person once it's safe to do so. This is our last program for the at least for the spring, but that means that you have to get outside and catch a piece of the spring migration that's going on right now. It's pretty fantastic. The warblers are starting to come through, and the orioles and everything else. So get outside as much as you can over the next few weeks, especially. And thank you all for coming. And we will see you soon. We'll let you know. Keep checking the website. They're updated on any programs that you want to rewatch. or, make sure you can check out the things that are going on this weekend. Get to the Freeport Art Museum, of course, for the Birds and Art display. That's just tremendous. I highly recommend going there. Check out their hours. But thanks again, Mark. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you, everyone.